Let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. All right, so we are continuing on the Yogananda Patipadā Sutta that we started last week. However, we will be going through the details of the sutta from the beginning today to invoke better clarity and understanding of the sutta, because I think and I believe that in this sutta, because it talks about a lot of the parts of practice that we use with our meditation, it would be very good to have that sort of sense of clarity. For that purpose, we'll be going through the sutta again. So, in summary, for those of you who are joining just today, the sutta speaks about 4 modes of practice with regards to how a person could develop their training, leading towards enlightenment. The 4 modes of training, if you do have the handout with you, which is available on the website, is the insight preceded by calm, calm preceded by insight, calm coupled with insight, and a mind seized with Dhamma restlessness, Dhamma uddacha, right? Now, mind you that within this sutta is one which has been repeated or taught by Venerable Ananda, right? However, because of the interaction between the monks in this sutta, now, the hierarchical structure of respect, as you would know, now an adult, a senior monk, can speak to a junior monk, calling his name, his clan, or by the usage of the word auso, right? Now, when it comes to a junior monk speaking to or trying to catch the attention of a senior monk, a junior monk trying to catch the attention of a senior monk, it has to always be with a term of respect, which is like Bhante or Venerable or Bhadanta or any of those words which are used in the Pali Canon, right? Now, in this sutta, we find that the interaction between Venerable Ananda and the other monks remained to be the word auso. Because before the demise of the Buddha, the monks would call each other, including the Buddha, also friend, right? Because the Buddha, seeing that after the demise of the Buddha, that there would be no other person with the authority that the Buddha had over the Sangha, to keep the peace and balance within the Sangha, the Buddha promulgated that after his demise, that there should be a hierarchical structure of respect following the demise of the Buddha. There you find the word also being used then by a senior monk towards a junior, and then the junior monk having to call a senior monk with a term relating to respect, like Bhadanta or Bhante, right? Understood, right? So this sutta is one that has been taught by Venerable Ananda, but it relates to a time, because of the word also being used in the interactions of the initial sutta, it relates to a time that the Buddha was living. So Ananda taught this while the Buddha was living, right? While the Buddha was living. Now, as we follow upon the contents of the sutta, we understand that the sutta does not support monoculture, right? Meaning, monoculture, meaning monoculture, not monoculture, monoculture, meaning that it doesn't support the individual practice or the plain practice of just vipassana or just samatha. It always pairs up with pairs or couples, both the practices together, and maintains the teaching that these practices should go hand in hand or one should be followed by another, right? To maintain or be able to bring a mind to a state where the mind can now achieve this enlightenment or bear the fruits of the Dhamma as spoken of by the Buddha. Why is this? We will touch upon, or rather, I think we have touched upon this a couple of times. And I touched upon this in yesterday's Sinhala Deshana as well, actually, which is the person in the interactions or in interactions which happen. We know, we have spoken about, and we've heard this many times over, about the interaction the self maintains with the five aggregates, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sanskara, and Vijnana, right? I don't have to repeat myself in English, do I? No, y'all are fine, yeah? Mentality, materiality, Rupa, Vedana, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, right? We know that the self or the being exists or persists to be within samsara because the main connection of the attributes of the five aggregates being cognized, seen, or interlinked by the concept of Atma, me, myself, and I. This Atma, like a glue, keeps us stuck onto the fact or maintains a thought process or condition process that each and every one of these five aggregates or experiences that we bear through these five aggregates are a part and parcel supportive of the person I. We understand this, don't we? You can just nod your head. Right? We understand this, right? We've spoken about this many times over. Now, because of this link, what happens is any sort of thought that arises within this being who is not enlightened, right, would always see, and even a being who is enlightened, but not not a arhat, a fully enlightened being, would always understand or take, cognize, view elements that come through the five aggregates or elements that are a part of the five aggregates through the scope of self. Through the scope of self. When the self is implemented upon now, for example, my phone, my earpods, my mug, my tea, there is a sense of I, although we might not even insinuate so, but the interactions that we hold are often supported in the blueprint by the factor of the support of I. Because of this nature, the vipassana that arises often tends to be even through the scope of I. Right? Because, for example, now you are sitting here in meditation and you are observing impermanent suffering and non-self. In the observation of impermanent suffering and non-self, the observation happens through this mind that we have, through this mind that we cook, through this mind that we meditate, with this one mind. This one mind, in all its interactions, even with the implementation or trying of experiencing of the vipassana, will happen then through a lens which filters everything through the scope of me, myself, and I. It is because of that that we have the implementation or the using of techniques mentioned within samatha bhavana or samatha meditation, tranquility, calm meditation, to ensure that the hindrances or the effect the hindrances has upon the mind are subdued to a certain level where now we will be able to view the elements of vipassana within or through a scope where it is not highly influenced by the structure of I, right? By the structure of I. Now, it is to that regard that Dhamma Uddhacha has been spoken about, right? Now, Dhamma Uddhacha, we will come to it when we are at that level today, I hope. With anything that we know, as we are also learning at this moment, we know, for example, we have stories of people who have attained enlightenment just by the mere fact of listening to the Buddha or reading something or regarding the concern the Dhamma by looking at a flower, by looking at a piece of a dirt cloth, a dirt rag. We have stories of various bhikkhus and lay people who have easily attained to stream entry through these things without meditating. The classification which is given to that sort of attainment falls under Uggatithanyu, Vipanchithanyu, Neyya, and Padaparama, which I think we have touched upon earlier. But for those of you who do not remember, I will make this occasion to remind you. Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu are Pudgalas or beings who have in the past practiced the doctrine, being with Buddhas, being with enlightened beings, being living and practicing in Buddha sasanas like we are all doing today, and accumulated the perfections or practice and cultivated the perfections to such an extent where now they just need to be nudged or reminded of that whole sort of plethora of practice that they are carrying with them through their samsaric journey. It is through that sort of an experience that a person would then be suddenly able to attain to whatever sense of enlightenment that that person attains to, be it sotapanna or arhatship. Right? That is a Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu Pudgala. Uggatithanyu Pudgala need a very basic, even a word is enough for them. Vipanchithanyu Pudgala needs a bit of an explanation, like for example, a sutra explanation, and as the Buddha has done in many occasions, and through which they will be able to attain. Then we have Uggatithanyu, Vipanchithanyu, Neyya, and Padaparama. Neyya are Pudgalas who are able to cultivate the necessary supportive factors within this birth, right? Through meditation and all of that. If meditation is done, they will be able to attain. And then we have Padaparama beings who will not be able to attain in this birth because their faculties are not cultivated or developed enough to be able to see the truth or to be able to develop the mind to a state where they will be able to penetrate deep into the Vidarshana truth that is held Vidarshana truth, or the truth of impermanent suffering and non-self with regards to all the elements within this being, right? Now, in those instances, with regards to Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu Pudgalas, we must remind ourselves that it was a mere instigation through Dhamma which then allowed them to attain not the meditation practice, right? Because their samsaric journey, the sort of accumulation of samadhi power, vidarshana power within the samsaric journey came to light just by that promptitude, just by the power of that promptitude. We do not have that for sure, right? Why don't we have that for sure? Because almost all of the Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu Pudgalas who were able to attain Nibbana have already attained Nibbana. Right? We are the ones who are now in the cultivation and the development stage leading up to enlightenment, right? Now, within The Dhamma restlessness, an important point which is to be noticed, is the fact of identification of Dhamma through non-self and Nirodha without the scope of Atma, right? The instilling of Dhamma into the mind to the depths of being, not to the depths of thought, right? What do I mean by the depths of being? Here, the depths of being would be explained to be the pure consciousness being the Bhavanga, right? Whereas thought are manifestations effected, which have been effected by the anusayas and the kileshas and defiled. This goes from an example of blue water, water that has taken up a color, blue or red or green or whatever it is, whatever your favorite color is. Huh? So the water before, let's say it's a bit of dye, or let's say it's, I don't know, something. Before that dye or color was put into the water maintained a certain clarity, a certain natural state, unaffected by the blue or the red or the green. The samatha, it focuses on bringing or subduing the color and bringing the mind into a state where it operates in a state of natural, that's the word that is used, in a state where the mind is unaffected by these factors which makes it now defiled, right? That is what the samatha practice is about within our Buddha Sasana, right? The samatha practices, of course, the others might say different things. Hindus might say, yes, this is how we go to Brahma, but we know we have no intentions of seeing Brahma, right? What we want to be able to see is the truth of Dhamma, the reality of the world. Our inclinations are towards enlightenment. The enlightenment processes are then spoken about being instigated by a person who is not based upon that same thing that we are trying to get rid of. What is that same thing we are trying to get rid of? The element which connects the self to the aggregates, isn't it? This is the main problem, isn't it? Taking the aggregates as me, myself, and I. When vipassana now, for example, let's say this, I'm trying to contemplate the impermanent suffering and non-self within this mug, for example, right? When I'm trying to now sort of see this impermanent suffering and non-self within this mug, the application of mind is working through something that I want to achieve. That I factor has to be subdued, right? That I factor has to be subdued for a person to be able to then go into the true contemplation, because vipassana is said, and I remember Venerable Aridhamma teaching us, vipassana is something which arises. And I think I told you this story. I never understood what he meant by, arising. What is going to arise? I don't know. I don't know what vipassana is. So if I don't know, how is it going to arise, right? That is what we all might think, isn't it? If I don't know what is going to arise, how can it arise? Because I just don't know. I haven't learned it. I'm not skilled in it. But the thing is, when the hindrances or whatever is suppressed, the insight which arises is almost like the sun, as obvious and clear, with such pristine clarity. It might be the most basic of, okay. It might be the most basic of, let's say, philosophies, let's say, for example, what's a good example? Okay, take every moment as it comes, for example. Or let's take an even bigger cliche, everything is impermanent. right? I'm calling it a cliche because we speak about it so many times, but we don't tend to sort of really understand what it is, isn't it? You know, let's take everything is impermanent. The instigator of saying everything is impermanent is different to when a person would truly experience that basic teaching. Basic, I'm calling it basic because we all know it so much, right? Basic teaching through experience. Now, that experience of true vipassana is life changing. But the instigated with darshana is not life changing. Because why? The connection of Atma. The connection of Atma would take it as a logic, as a concept, but the experience of the Vidarshana would happen at the absence of the Atma, the self, would happen in a way that it changes the structure by which you are now sort of working with. That is what the contents of the sutta hints at by saying that monoculture is not sort of supported within this particular sutta or within this piece of training, right? Especially when a person goes on to, let's say, Sotapanna, Sakuddagami, goes on to Anagami, Arahanthood. That person to go from non-returner to enlightenment or to enter stages of non-returner or full enlightenment has to have the jhanas. That is a must. Without the jhanas, a person will not be able to attain to specifically non-returner and enlightenment, full enlightenment, meaning arahanthood. Okay, now let's come back. Any questions on all of that? Hold your questions. Let's do the sutta and take it now step by step, right? Now, Miri called, I had a conversation with Miri, and I hope Miri doesn't mind me saying this. And we were discussing over the phone about, things that we might have not been clear in the earlier class, right? And something which came up, or what Miri suggested, and I thought which was quite pertinent, was the fact that why is it that we have to go to the jhana factors or the hindrances, right? Remember, I told you, even if it is metta, even if it is metta or whatever the jhanas that we have, the fourth, the third, whatever it is, how do we turn it into vipassana? I told you, going down to the jhana factors or the hindrances behind, even deeper than the jhana factors. The hindrances being those which affect then the jhanas. Why do we go there? What is the purpose of that? Why are we going back again? True, right? Isn't it? I'm guessing that was the question. That is because how else are we able to truly measure the power of samadhi that we have? You know what I mean? If we are, let us say, if I am unable to, let's say, in basic anapana, we come out of the ana breathing meditation and then we kind of observe, review the experience that we have had, right? Let's say a person starting off anapana is unable to do this reviewing, let's say a very, very, very low state, right? Meaning he's unable to do, he's coming out of the meditation, he or she or whatever person is coming out of the meditation, but comes out with a sense of, oh, I'm glad it's over, maybe, or comes out a bit distracted, or even in trying to, those two, distracted or with a sense of relief that the meditation is over, or because that is realistic, isn't it? Sometimes that does happen, or even with the fact of trying to review the experience of meditation, yet is unable to find a ground within that experience. Do you understand? I'm looking, I'm trying to, but it seems like I don't have much clarity. It feels like, yes, I spent maybe 1 hour, 2 hours in meditation. However, looking back, reviewing the factors of that experience, it feels as if now I am unable to sort of really catch hold of what that true experience is. What does that say? That says that the samadhi is not pristine or does not have enough strength, right? Does not have. That is why we go back to a standard form, because we know, okay, jhana factors, there are 5, right? We have a ground to stand on there, which then acts as a measure for us to go forward. Yeah, which then acts as a measure for us to go forward. Now, let's come to the sutta, right? And we are going to talk about, and please, if you do have any questions, please put it forward at any time. But let us now get into the sutta, okay? Page number 65. Okay, turn to page number 66, please. I'm sorry. Calm first, then insight. Okay. According to the Majjhima commentary, the one who practices calm first, then insight is called a calmness practitioner. Calmness practitioner. That is, one who first cultivates access concentration, upachara samadhi, the jhanas or the formless attainments, and then takes up insight meditation. Access concentration is a concentration gained just before attaining jhana. Just before attaining jhana. According to the Patipadā Magga, this first mode of meditation involves first establishing a basis for meditative concentration and then follows the insight contemplation. According to the Patipadā Magga, the first mode of meditation involves first establishing a basis for meditative concentration and then follows the insight contemplation. Such a concentration refers to one-pointedness of mind, an absence of distraction. Chittassa ekagata avikkepo samadhi. What does this mean? What is distraction? Distractions, again, is caused by the clinging to a certain self. Right? Think about it. How do we get distracted? Think about your own practice. What are the thoughts that arise in your mind? Any thoughts? Those thoughts, is it not in any way or some way attached to the life, the relatives, the friends, the duties, the family, the house, the car, all of these things that you have? A distraction is a sign of self-attachment. Got it? That is what we are referring to here, distraction. Whereas insight here refers to contemplating the 3 characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Right? That is clear. Right? A famous example of such a meditator is Subhuti, who is said to have first cultivated metta jhana, and on the basis of that clear bliss goes on to cultivate insight, wisdom. In due course, he attains arahanthood. Now, something as I was reading and preparing for this class, something that I remembered was, as I was reading, when we go through our meditation and when we experience certain stages of prolonged bliss, right? Now, we must all realize that jhanas, when they arise through practice, right? Everyone experiences it in different ways. It necessarily doesn't have to be, with the lights or without the lights. It can happen in a multiple amount of ways, And most of us, if the time that we are able to manifest or be within a certain amount of concentration for a certain amount of time, that may possibly be a state of jhanic bliss. However, weak, weak, easily dissolvable. It will easily crumble. However, this attachment to self sabotages that attainment as well, right? Because in a sense where we glorify what we assume a jhana is, or in a sense of glorifying what we want to reach, we become unaware of the present moment achievements, right? Because why? This moment, now anapanasati, think about your anapanasati. We get the facts, or we experience an edge in this meditation where now we are observing the anapana. And we have spoken about this, where we now think about, okay, I'm doing this now, what else? What do I do next, right? That is, it will fall under Dhamma Uddacha. Dhamma Uddacha is a hindrance to Vipassana, which sabotages Vipassana. And that sabotage is brought about by the attachment to a notion created by self, right? That sense of us assuming that that enlightenment or the fruit that we are experiencing is going to come does not allow us to experience and go deeper or to strengthen the fruit that we already have. Do you get it? Right? That is why this sense of samatha practice has been really sort of emphasized, because we will always, with the mind that we have, which, you know, of course, with our Western education or whatever, we are always planning ahead, isn't it? That is what we have always been taught, to plan ahead, to look ahead. But the thing is, with this practice, it is about the present moment and detaching from the self, which we assume knows everything, which holds the data to my life, my world, my universe. That detachment must come across in a way where now the thing that I have now is able to now be seen as whatever fruit that I can now develop. The fruit does not arise in the future, it is in the present moment. The darshana does not arise in the future, it is in the present moment. The moment that we stop or quit the struggle of assuming that it is going to come if I did 45 minutes more or 30 minutes more, that is the moment that you get it. Right? That is the moment that you get it. Now, back to the sutta. Insight first, then calm. Please, if you have any questions, if any part is not clear to you, please unmute yourselves and you can ask anything. Yeah. All right. Now, insight first, then calm. The second mode of progress, where insight is cultivated first, then calm, refers to a practitioner who naturally gains insight, with which he cultivates one-pointedness of mind, The second mode of progress, where insight is cultivated first, then calm, refers to a practitioner who naturally gains insight, with which he cultivates one-pointedness of mind. Now, to this sort of a practitioner, there is a high it could be assumed that this person has a support of past life vipassana-based karma, right? Which allows this person to tap into that sense of vipassana within the elements and within the different sort of factors that we experience through meditation, right? According to the Patisambhida Magga, the second mode of meditation begins right away with the contemplation of the three characteristics. This is followed by the cultivation of letting go, perhaps as a result of the detachment arising from inside. This is followed by the cultivating of letting go, perhaps as a result of detachment arising from the inside. All right? Arising from the inside, which means now remember this technique, this specific technique, vipassana and then samatha. At the beginning of the sutta, we went across the fact that a person, Venerable Ananda saying, every person who has attained enlightenment before him or before that specific time, every enlightened being has done so using the mechanisms mentioned within this sutta. Not one, but more than one, right? So we should not assume that, for example, if we pick, okay, let's do insight first, then calm. This is not going to be your final mode or mechanism of practice, which will lay way to enlightenment for the rest of your life. This is not going to be it. You will have this practice, and then there will come a time where you will bring samatha and then vipassana into it. Right? And then there can be times when you bring both the Yugalandana technique into it, right? Both samatha and vipassana. That should be understood with clarity. However, for the person to bring him or herself into a position where now the person becomes suitable in making an informed decision after having evaluated the skill of practice existent at that moment, comes from some sort of stable foundation that has been cultivated by one of these techniques. Right? By one of those techniques, meaning the first, the second, or the third. Right? Or else, if we switch too often, we are not going to get anywhere. Right? We are not going to get anywhere. And then we have this word of letting go. Because when insight, or when a person gets used to insight, for that person to now go into samatha, right? To go into samatha, that person it will be difficult for that person to go into samatha, because that person who developed vipassana is going to be used to a certain way of meditation, which is Trilakkhana based bhavana, right? Now to come from Trilakkhana bhavana to a state where you do not think anything is going to be rather challenging. It comes down to then, for example, vitakka and vichara. Now, vitakka and vichara, good that this is coming up because we discussed about this at the revision on Monday as well. Vitakka and vichara, it is said that vitakka and vichara, although we might use examples of sustained, or we might sort of translate it to say sustained thought and initial application, sustained application, right? Do not assume that this has anything to do with what you're thinking right now. The part played by vitakka and vichara is so minute in a jhana that it is almost as if now, for example, this table right now, the table that the computer is and you're seeing me on is I feel is stable. It's not rocking. But the thing is, if we were to measure this with the apparatus that could pick up that minute level of vibration, it would be vibrating, isn't it? Right? There would be very minute, subtle movements even on this table. However, I don't see anything moving. Vitaka is like the subtle vibration. So just imagine, right? Just imagine how far that concentration has to then further develop to be able to go to a state where now you are able to review the factors of vitaka and vichara, then apply the bosagga, which is the letting go of that vitaka and vichara, enabling you to go and flourish into the deeper, higher states of the jhanic bliss. There has to be a profound sense of calming for a person to be able to tap into it. That is the reason we go down with darshana. We go down to the jhana factors or even the hindrances, right? Or even to the hindrances. If the table, that using the same example, if the table was the jhana factors now vibrating, the earth that the table is on is the hindrances, right? Which is a even more deeper sort of dwell into the fact of realizing that state of instability in that jhana, right? Instability in that jhana. So because of that reason, we have the factors of dhanic factors, vitaka, vichara, priti, sukha, ekagata, coming into contemplation when it comes to stepping forward from samatha or a base of samatha into vipassana, right? From a base of samatha into vipassana, moving on, right? Both calm and insight together. Calm and insight practiced together in the third method, calm and insight practiced together, we enter the first jhana, emerging from it, apply insight to that experience. That is, see all that we have experienced as being nothing but the five aggregates, right? How do you see that which has been experienced? I'm sorry. How do we see that which has been experienced as the five aggregates? This does not come by, this does not happen through application of knowledge. This happens through further calming. Do you understand? Right? It does not come through the application of, because if we can't apply knowledge into that vipassana base, because the moment that we apply that knowledge into the vipassana base, what we are essentially applying is something tainted. Tainted by what? Tainted specifically by a consciousness like what we refer to as the blue or red or green water. The experience of vipassana comes up or prompts through a mind which is in a state of clarity. So seeing of the five aggregates which hinders that practice is seen through, or is seen through elements of the manifestation of that bliss. Let me explain. Let's go to, we've all practiced metta bhavana. Let's take metta bhavana, right? Or no, this example is better, I think. Vedananupassana, right? When we practice, now I want you to think about the sensations that you have observed. You might not observe them all the time, but you might have profound states where you now see Vedanas, right? When you experience a sensation at a specific part of the body, the sensation manifests in a certain way. Sometimes it's very gross, meaning you feel like the whole hand is experiencing a certain sensation. And sometimes it is very, very fine, where you see the sensation, or you're able to see that the gross sensation that you saw before, now you know as clear as day with so much clarity that it was not so, that it was many minute sensations which gave result to that gross experience of the sensation. Yes? Can we relate to that experience? Where a hard, gross experience of Vedana was now you were able to see a fine experience of Vedana. How did that happen? Because you took hold of one part of that experience. What was that one part of experience? You focused on a certain part of that gross object, which, let's say, the hand, right? Let's say you focus now, the whole hand seems like it's numb or it's vibrating or it's scratching or whatever it is, right? Whatever experience. You took to contemplate upon the middle part or one part of that object, meaning this object, the hand, that now it fine-tuned to a level where the sensations were now more visible with even more clarity than ever. It is almost as if with a tiny piece of string, you pull something and at the end of it, now you see appearing something much, much more bigger, right? That tiny piece of string was that sensation or the focal point that you took. That took you down to a final level of state. Anapana. Now we are shifting, huh? Anapana meditation. You followed the breath, you followed the breath, you followed the breath, the whole breath. And then at one point, you stopped following and you just maintained yourself here at one point. And then from that point, you began to see the arising and the passing away, arising and the passing away. Through that one moment of that arising and passing away, you were able to realize a certain sense of impermanence within that moment itself. That is that string. That is what takes you to the 5 aggregates. Do you understand? Because I think last time I was not clear enough, and that is my fault. I was not clear enough in saying that how do you go down or how do you dwell deeper? You do not dwell deeper by vitakka or by the power of your vitakka. You dwell deeper by heightening focus, heightening concentration, right? But that heightening of concentration, for it to come, the Buddha says, for that to happen, the person that you are following should be a person that no doubt arises upon. Because you see, for that sense of confidence to arise in what you are doing comes by the power of what you are learning and how much you trust in what you are learning. That's where the attribute of Shraddha comes into all of this. Right? Because if you are in doubt, if you think, oh, am I learning the right thing? That is often going to be reflected upon the fact of now doing what? You're going to be fishing. Let's try from here, let's try from here, let's try from here. That fishing expedition does not end. Right? Because a fishing expedition is not going to, it's going to give you something and then take it away. It's going to give you something, and even if it is the right place, it's still going to do that because of why? Doubt. Doubt cuts it out. Remember, the worst akusala, even beyond killing a Buddha, as spoken of by the Buddha, is not matricide, patricide, or any of this. It's niyata mithya drushtika. Right? Niyata mithya drushtika comes through the aggregate of doubt, doubting. Right? When that sense of doubt appears, nothing that you hold focus upon, you can stably sort of stabilize yourself there. Because why? Doubt creates that instability again. Right? That is where that attribute of Shraddha comes in. right? Where you are. And this Shraddha is not something that is, whiffy in nature, by the word, by what I'm saying, like whiffy, like it's not like, you can't just have it. It comes through analysis. It comes through tearing things apart. Because why? If that is not done, at some point when you're going to go deeper, it is going to create that question mark, right? Because in this practice, what you assume through reading of all of these things, what you see is we continue to excavate more and more and more. The questions that you did not have last week, you have today. So this sense of Shraddha is not in any way, it doesn't have anything to do with your cultural implications of Shraddha or anything. That does not come into question. We are not even talking about that. We are talking about Shraddha with that acute tendency and support of wisdom. And that comes through analysis, investigation, learning, and all of those parts, right? Back to the sutta, the five aggregates. Do we now understand how we go from the jhana to the hindrance? Yeah, the faces are still blank after all that talking. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So what did you understand? Let's finish the paragraph first, right? We have experience as being nothing. That is, see all that we have experienced as being nothing, but the five aggregates: being, form, feeling, perceptions, formations, and consciousness, that are in turn impermanent, subject to suffering, and are such non-self. Then we enter the second jhana, emerge and apply insight to it. This twofold reflection is applied to the other jhanas in the same manner until the path of stream winner or higher is realized, right? So there, the coupling of both the application or the experience of that which one experienced through samatha, being the jhanic absorption, and through that jhanic absorption, the application of vipassana, and that same application of vipassana leading way into moving from now into samatha. I'm sorry, samatha into vipassana, right? Samatha into vipassana. Now, let's talk about the five aggregates and that following of the experience of whatever it is, the jhanic experience, and following down to the aggregates. What did you understand there? Shirani, would you like to go?
I think it's fine-tuning your meditation technique. You start with the gross sensation, and going into the fine sensation takes away you from all the aggregates.
We are trying to, okay. What we are essentially here trying to do is calm and insight practice together. We enter the first jhana and emerging from it, apply insight to that experience, right? Apply insight to that experience of what we experience at the jhana. That is, see all that we have experienced as being nothing but the five aggregates. So then the question came, how do we see that sense of nothing but the five aggregates in the jhana? Being by heightening the focus upon which we have experienced, upon what we have experienced, right? Just like in the Vedananupassana, the gross sensation, the hand focusing on one point takes you, brings you into a finer, more truer version of the Vipassana, a more truer version, a more realistically applicable version. Before, what was the version? The version was, oh, the whole hand, gross sensation. But now we go deep into the fact of, no, that gross sensation was created by fine, 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 fine sensation. Arising and passing away so fast that we thought that the whole sensation, that is once there was only one sensation in the whole hand, but now I see that it was not just one sensation, but it was a collective, right? That it was a collective. When you're doing metta bhavana, you find a sense of restlessness in the metta, right? You're trying to do metta, but then there's something which arises. You go deeper, you observe, you stop sort of being swayed like a coconut tree, in the wind, and you say, what is happening? You observe. In that observation, you realize the fact of dosa now sort of burning inside of you in such a minutely, maybe even an insignificant way, but now affecting the metta bhavana in a very significant way. Right? Creating a sense of restlessness, creating an attribute of aversion to that experience of whatever it is you're doing. Right? It is like, for example, people who do not, now, for example, let us take now people who do not like to be put on the spot, for example, right? Some people, they might do wrong, but they don't like to be put on the spot about it. They don't like to be sort of, what's the word? What's the word? Sort of called up on it. I think you understand what I mean, called up on it. There's another word. Called up on it. When they are called up on it, they start blaming Tom, Dick, and Harry. They start blaming everything else, right? To what? Why? To get out of it almost happens. It's a Vanchaka Dhamma, right? It almost happens naturally, instinctively to that person because he does not like that experience, or he does not maybe want to talk about it, or he does not want to be sort of for that thing to come to light or whatnot. In that kind of a way, the aversion in the metta or in the mind affects the metta development. Going deeper into realizing that gives one a hold of that aversion to now kind of tend to that aversion, to get rid of that aversion and to move on. Right? In a similar way, when we are at a stage of sort of seeing or having the experience of jhana, we apply this sense of amplifying the consciousness towards a certain element of that experience, taking us to its deeper root, which in this case is the fact of the five aggregates. Do you understand? In my mind, this is very clear. In my mind. I want it to be clear in your mind. How can I further make it clear? Can I have your thoughts, please? What are you thinking? Miri, can you support this discussion, please? Miri.
Yes, Bhante.
Miri, do you think there is more clarity? Or there is something to be made clear?
Yes, I think I understand why a little bit more. I still, my real question was, Bhante, I said, why do we not concentrate on the insight, or not insight, but on the three characteristics within the meditation? That was one of the queries I had.
Why don't we? You mean, for example, give me an example, Miri, for me to better understand.
So we are observing the breath.
Yeah.
And the breath is becoming more and more less. We notice that it is disappearing, and we can observe the beginning, the middle, and the end of it. And then when as it's sort of disappearing, when we reflect on it later on, why would we not think of it like that when we are reflecting on it, rather than waiting to look at the hindrances?
Yes. So now, one thing to be understood, I think, with that regard is, first, if it is calm first, then insight, we can't just disregard the samatha. We have to create a stepping stone to be able to come out from the samatha into the vipassana. First. The second is to have the ability to come into a true understanding that we now possess a qualifying amount of samatha or samadhi, where now our practice in going into vipassana would be much more effective, right? For that purpose, if it is calm first, then insight, for that purpose, we go back into the hindrances or follow or the jhana factors, or into the jhana factors. The reason that we do not apply the anicca, dukkha, anatma as mentioned within this sutta and the commentaries to this sutta is because the application of anicca, dukkha, anatma without the facilitation or proper establishing of samadhi would be applying a thought or a concept tainted by the hindrances which exist in the mind already, thus leading, or thus which is called Dhammuddacca, which we have not come to yet.
Oh, right? I see. Okay, I think now I understand. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But Dil asked that question the other day about how do we know we are in the right amount of samadhi?
Yeah. That's a question I asked you, Bhante, when I was meditating. And and unfortunately, my appliance, the charge went off, so I missed. I had to go and bring another one. So I wasn't sure which question you were answering, whether it was my question or whether it was another, which I think now we just mentioned was Mihiri's. But the question I asked was, in this practice of changing from samadhi to vipassana, how do you know? Now you were saying if you were to go from samadhi to vipassana.
Yeah. The answer to that is, Dil, are we able to go into a state where we now can review the jhana with clarity?
Yes. I understood from expression today that so when you go from samadhi, the first to vipassana, you have to first look at, and when you come out of it, you have to look at the jhana factors in that samadhi. And if you can see those clearly, then it's stable enough for you to proceed to do that change. But if you can't and you come back, I think the way I understand that when you're coming out, if you find that you can't really quite recollect what you're saying, it is the sense as I, me, and my factor. That factor is what causes that instability. So we have to then go back into that into the samatha and practice a little more to get deeper, so that then we wouldn't we would see it more clearly and not wobble and come down.
No. Why? right? Why? Now let's say in the Vedananupasana, right? I'm taking the same example again. From the gross hand, if we did not have the gross hand and that level of attention, both the gross hand and the level of attention was a facilitator for the finer attention. Do you understand? That is the point.
No, Bhante, didn't understand it.
The gross attention, right? You have the gross attention. I'm not sorry, the gross sensation where you think or where you see that the whole hand is numb, for example. Now with this, now you see, now when we started off meditating, the hand was numb, the shoulder was numb, it was painful, but you fought with it, isn't it? You sat through, you fought with it, you sort of, pushed yourself to sort of not, come into a sense where you have a sense of equanimity towards a sensation and sort of thrive and to sort of strive through, to stay on with the practice. With that, you cultivated a sense of course, patience, forbearance, right? All of that enabled you to, at one point, when all those factors came into a certain position, at once, the hand wasn't gross anymore. You now started seeing finer sensations, but of course, you had a focus point. The focus point, even for when the hand was gross, might have been the middle. But when all the other factors of forbearance, patience, virya, samadhi, all of these things arose, that facilitated the fact of you now going into a state where you now didn't see the gross hand, you saw the finer one minute sensation which played its role in mimicking a gross hand. Think of the fire triangle, right? The fire triangle, when three factors, combustion, what are the three parts of the fire triangle? Combustion. I remember grade 6. This is grade 6. Thank God for Google. Okay, fire. Basically a fire triangle: heat, oxygen, and fuel, right? Heat, oxygen, and fuel creates fire, right? When heat, that is what? In the same concept, when the samadhi and all these other parts are now brought into that, comes into that level, now appears. It is not that you followed, it is not, think about the experience of traveling or going, think about the experience of transcending the gross hand to the finer sensation. You did not essentially follow it through. It appeared, isn't it? Because that, the plateauing of the factors which were now able to facilitate that. Earlier, when you were experiencing a gross hand, you were experiencing a gross hand because you only had factors which were able to manifest the gross hand. Now the factors grew, enabling you to manifest the finer sensation. When that grows further, when the jhana now becomes or comes to a state, right, with the mere thinking or mere sort of attention deviance towards, or switching of it, not deviance, switching of attention now from the fact of samatha to an element of nothingness. Now through that facilitation, it almost appears instantly the hindrances. The point of following, how was it instigated? That instigation came through that element of experience of instability. It might be a small thing, the shaking, the minute shaking of the table, which happened because of that sort of unseen shaking of the earth. What do you think now, Miri? Miri?
Yes, Bhante. No, I think it's slightly more clear in the sense that I will try to see what happens. So maybe it's just that.
What is it which is clear to you?
Well, for a start, I think what you were saying about the gross hand and then how eventually the finer things become more obvious. To begin with, when you're meditating, you concentrate on something, you see something grossly, and then the finer things become more obvious. But going back to Dill's kind of query, I would have thought that then you would have to go, if say, for example, it's not clear, like she said, then you will have to go back to doing more samatha, but you said, no, that's not the way to do it.
The thing is, at this level, of attempting to transgress that element, because now, of course, we are reading it. This is, we have almost, what is happening here is we almost have the path in front of us. So we assume that we know, or, we have the details of it. I mean, I'm telling you the details of it, right? So then you think, okay, I can go and come back and, do all that. But when you are at that level, it happens differently.
Yeah, what you're saying is it's not something I think, if I just correct me if I'm wrong, Bhante, but
one more point before you continue. In taking Dill's point, okay, is it now enough? The thing is, that itself is a hindrance that won't arise.
Right, okay, then I get it. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Won't arise.
Okay, so what you're saying is really when we start seeing it clearly, it will come to us. So we have to, our job really is to actually be patient and observe what we see. Just observe. That's what we
I was going to ask you, because that's how I experience. It's the sensations comes natural, automatically. That's what happened. That's how I experience.
But the thing is, we must make it very clear, right? We must make it very clear that sense of longing has to be cut off. That sense of longing has to be cut off, right? Has to be cut off, because the moment we assume, now what else? It's wrong. Because a person here, put yourself, now the class is going to end, and when you have time, and if you're going through the sutta later on, put yourself in the shoes of a being in a strong practice, and imagine what that being might be going through, right? Think about, now back in the day, all these documents were not there, no commentaries and sub-commentaries, nothing was there, right? The Buddha gave them a small instruction that was followed, right? Actually, we tend to have maybe more information than they did. Right? We have so much more information than they did almost, right? And maybe in a certain way, because I actually have access to certain documents, and on top of those documents it says do not share with lay people or non-meditators, right? Why does it say so? Because if the person knows these things, what happens is, this is what is going to come next. Not because they want to hide stuff from people, because the fact of that anticipation is put into the person. And because of that anticipation, that curtails the practice, creates that sense of me again. Right?
Yes, that's true, Bhante. They do say to put away all your knowledge, whatever you know, and just observe at the time, isn't it? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, Bhante, thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to, I think, yes. Any questions? I think we should stop here, and I'm going to give you the week to ponder over, and really apply this to your life, and really think about, okay, what is it that is distracting me during my meditation? Is it some sort of, go into those parts and realize the truth behind the going into all a sense of review of whatever meditations that you have gone through over the years. Yes, Dil.
So, Bhante, am I right in thinking that? So, when you're actually if you're asking, is it the right time or something? Obviously, you're not there, because when it happens, you're focusing on something and suddenly it appears, that it becomes fine tuned. It just happens like that. And when it happens, that's the point, because it's happened and it's stable. But if you're thinking, am I writing? Then there's a lot of doubt in that, and there's the aggregate, there's an I in that. So obviously that is, you're not there. So when it happens, it suddenly happens without thinking, without I, without doubt, anticipation, any of those things. But when it suddenly, you're focusing on an area, and then you keep looking at it, and you get finer and finer, and then all of a sudden you're just on those pinpoints, you're there. So whether there's lights or not, but that's the point, because you're not anticipating, you're not questioning, you're not asking, am I right, am I not there? Because if you are doing those, then obviously you're not right.
Yeah.
So when it's thank you for answering that question.
Anticipation, and a very powerful tool that personally has helped me is the fact of, I think I've told you this before, is the fact of determining enlightenment at that moment, and determining enlightenment at that moment, meaning before you go into meditation, first of all, kayena vāca cittena, and then sort of aspiring to achieve or experience or to arouse a sense of enlightenment in this very moment, right? Thus, truly arriving at this very moment. Now, I know that I think through our experience of life, each and every one of us, it's not easy, and I sympathize. I sympathize with myself too, because it's not easy as well. Not only with you, I sympathize with myself as well. With the fact that, we have so much stuff going on. And that is true and real. You have so many things, responsibilities, and all of these things. But this Dhammic contemplation should trickle down to the fact of realizing not that these things are invaluable. These experiences that you are having as a husband, a wife, a daughter, son, or whatever it is invaluable, is useless. No. The fact that these are of a certain world, which is a manifestation of different other things, but this observation of vipassana sort of is an umbrella over all of that experience. In a way, not with an egoistic sense of contemplation, but with a sense of understanding that whatever it is that we do, at the end, these are all conditioned phenomena at the end. That sense for me has personally helped with the fact of not deviating or being distracted by the elements of our lives, but really coming down, because at the end of the day, the true nature of all things is when a person has a good day, right? that person will be happy. When a person has a bad day, that person will be unhappy. And if the person is happy and any person come into contact with this person will also feel that happiness. If the person is having a bad day and that person is unhappy, anyone coming into contact with that person will feel that unhappiness. Simple as that, isn't it? Right? The fact is, it is nothing personal. It is the fact that we are all so complex is the wrong word, this complex interweaving of emotions and conditions confuses us and makes us believe and imagine that this philosophy that we are trying to sort of truly practice and experience is something which might be just a practice, but really, this is not a practice, this is life. And that should be very clear. I'm going to leave you with that. And we will continue on the last part of this sutta next week.
Ante, just a very small clarification on what you said just now. So now, when I first went to meet a girl with Bhikkhun Nyananda, he said exactly what you said. You have to say in Sinhalese, "Mam hita kaya vatane yam kisi varada දැනුවත් වුණොත් කරන මට සමාව ලැබෙව." So that asking the kind vata, he said. But then he said, "Mage sit." When you sit down, you make the determination of the result of it. But he advised us to say, "Mage sita me." සෝවාන් මාර්ගයේ ගමන් කර සෝවාන් ඵල සමාධියට පත් වෙනවා. Many years later, when I came to London Buddhist Vihara and I met Upananda Handura, he said, "Why are you asking for only that? Your intent, like what you mentioned just now, a few minutes ago, that it's enlightenment that you want." So he said, think how you're going in the marge and that it's arahanta bodhiyakin arahat pala samadhi patteva. And he said he teaches even the 6-year-olds in where he was Florida like that, because he says you aim high, you may not necessarily go there, but you'll fall. So what you also determine. So since then I've always determined every sitting that you determine its end goal. Is that what you're also explaining now, Bhante? Have I got that correct? Ask forgiveness and then that intention determines.
Yeah, I don't think what I think really matters. What truly matters is what the Buddha says. And I believe in going through the doctrine, we do not see any part which focuses on a specific part of the enlightenment. What we often see is enlightenment, right?
Thank you.
But enlightenment, I think it should be made clear that enlightenment cannot be gained through aspiration, but this is only for inspiration.
Thank you, Bhante.
Right?
Because they say Arahanta Bodhi, if you want to be an Arahant, of course you want to Buddha, it's different thing, but most people prefer to have enlightenment the easier way, which as an Arahanta without one. But some people may want to determine to be a Buddha like Sumedha Tausa did. So that's what he was explaining, to say that Arahanta Bodhi from this to Bodhi, nuance the Epal Samadhi. Thank you, Bhante.
All right, good.
These are only tiny drops that fall. You have to think and think exactly what you're saying. And only when we actually have practice and that one by one, it's such a slow process for...
No, it absolutely is. And I remember because when I was my first time at PAOK and the other Sri Lankans who did not speak English, so they used me to sort of as a translator to sort of get the kamatahan from the Sayadaw, and I didn't understand what they were saying, and hence I was a very bad translator. I was a very bad translator because I didn't understand. Because really, I think to understand those states, you have to really. I actually got told off by a nun as well. And I mean, it's funny now, but I remember that first summer, I had just got ordained, and sometimes to truly understand these things, you really have to experience them and to sort of really look inward at your practice to be able to sort of see them. Some of them even though you look inward, because you might have not experienced them at all, you don't even understand what they're talking about. Actually, there have been moments I've been thinking, maybe I've actually thought, and silly me, I've actually thought maybe you need to go to the hospital. A nun was telling me her experiences to translate to the Sayadaw. Now the Sayadaw was sitting right in front, and I was thinking to myself, maybe you need a doctor, because I did not understand the experience that she was going through, right? Which was to do with the nimitta and all of these things at the time. And it was only through then, time after of practicing myself and then experiencing those specific states that, that now I can laugh about it. You know what I mean? So I think, yes, you have to experience it on your own to really sort of understand. So, okay. So thank you, everyone. And I'm sure you're having a little bit, your blood sugar is on the high side today. So I hope you've taken your metformin and your pills. But I wish all of you a wonderful new year, and I will see you at the next class. Take care and have a wonderful rest of the evening. Teruan Sannai.
Teruan Sannai.